World of Warcraft is a game with many cool and interesting classes, each of which has different specializations that give options and flavor to your chosen class. In this video we're going to take a look at my pick for the top 10 most awesome DPS specs from all classes currently in Warlords of Draenor. I'm basing this list on playstyle, fantasy, abilities and aesthetics. Please bear in mind this is a totally subjective list and there's a good chance you won't agree with me, which is fine. If we all had the same opinion, the world would be a very boring place. With that said, I'd love to see you leave your top 10 DPS specs in the comments below. Number 10. The Frost Death Knight. Now in terms of gameplay, the Frost Death Knight is widely considered a face roll spec. However, it's my personal favourite of the two Death Knight DPS specs. The thing that appeals to me with the Frost DK is the fantasy of being a plated Reaper that uses the power of Frost to kill enemies with big brutal attacks as well as applying dots to them from range. My favourite Frost DK abilities are Howling Blast, which is a ranged AoE attack that generates runic power and applies a frost dot to the target. Obliterate, which procs often and can crit for some crazy numbers, and Army of the Dead, which isn't an ability that's exclusive to Frost, but it gives the Death Knight a lot of flavour and feels really cool regardless. Back in Cata I mained a Frost DK and always felt like an absolute killing machine in BGs. I haven't played it too much since then, but I've recently capped him to try out some Frost PvP in Warlords. Number 9. The Windwalker Monk. The Windwalker Monk is a spec I'm still in the process of learning myself, however it's one that I've always thought to be cool. You're a master of martial arts who takes on enemies using only your hands and fists. You also have a hell of a lot of mobility in the form of spins, rolls and kicks that really appeals to me in terms of gameplay. As monks are the newest spec added to the World of Warcraft as of recording this video, they also have the most visually impressive and up-to-date animations in their abilities and combat. My favourite Windwalker Monk abilities are Fists of Fury, which unleashes a flurry of punches upon targets in a cone ahead of you, stunning them for 4 seconds. Rising Sun Kick, which does big damage and looks pretty cool, as you do a backflip kicking your enemy as you go up into the air. And Flying Serpent Kick, in which you cover a huge distance by doing a really long karate kick. Monks are a class that are often overlooked by the player base as they remind everyone of Mists of Pandaria, hence why they're the least played class in the game, but I think their playstyle, animations and abilities are really cool and a lot of fun. Number 8. The Shadow Priest. If you ask any Shadow Priest the reason they decided to choose that spec, the vast majority of them will say it's because they thought it was cool. Shadow Priests get their own unique aesthetic with shadow form, which turns them into a phantom-like entity. They use dark shadow magic to apply curses and damage over time effects to their enemies. I'd definitely say they're the most spooky looking spec in the game. Another thing I like with the Shadow Priest is how when you gain your big damage resource in the form of Shadow Orbs, they're visually present on your character and circle around you. My favourite Shadow Priest abilities are Cascade, which does a lot of AoE damage on the short cooldown of 25 seconds. This is especially effective in battlegrounds during large team fights. Shadow Fiend, which summons a shadow-like creature to attack your target for 12 seconds, and Dispersion, which turns you into pure shadow energy and reduces all damage by 90% for 6 seconds. These abilities, along with a few others which I haven't mentioned, give the Shadow Priest a lot of flavour. It's certainly not one of the most popular specs in the game, but it sure is one of the coolest. Number 7. The Feral Druid. Now a lot of you probably know that the Feral Druid is a spec I've really enjoyed in PvP this expansion, mostly due to them being quite face rolled and having great mobility. But other than that, it's a spec I actually find pretty cool. You get to shapeshift into a giant cat to deal damage with bleeds and bites. You can also change to bear form to reduce your damage taken, and go into travel form for increased movement speed. For me, the fantasy of being a shapeshifter has always been something I've found appealing. And I feel like the Druid class in general has pulled this off really well, and each spec feels unique and full of flavour, which is impressive considering it's the only class in the game with 4 specs. My favourite Feral Druid abilities are Wild Charge, which allows you to leap behind an enemy, stunning them for 3 seconds, Incarnation, which gives you an improved cat form and an armoured visual effect, and Ferocious Bite, which can crit for well over 100k if you're fully geared. Something that has bothered me this expansion, however, is one of the new level 100 talents, Claws of Shivala, which turns you into a cat humanoid. I've never liked the visuals of this talent, yet I felt forced to use it since it's the best one for PvP. Hopefully Blizz will add a minor glyph so you don't have to look like a retarded cat person if you choose this talent. But other than that, the Feral Druid's a spec with unique flavour, great mobility, and a hybrid feel to it. Number 6, the Combat Rogue. The Combat Rogue was the spec I initially decided to main for the launch of Warlords. I first tried it on the beta and quickly fell in love with its playstyle. It's a rather simple spec to get used to, but timing your cooldowns is a big factor in playing this spec to its maximum potential. The main reason I've always thought of combat as a cool spec is its use of dual-wielded swords. You're essentially a swashbuckler who uses agility and quick attacks to go toe-to-toe with your enemies, which I really like. You've also got a lot of cleavers of Combat Rogue too. My favourite Combat Rogue abilities are Killing Spree, which does a crazy amount of burst damage if you time it with red buff. Adrenaline Rush, which increases your energy regeneration and allows you to spam abilities for 15 seconds, and Death from Above, which is one of your level 100 talents and has a great animation as well as big damage. Overall, the Combat Rogue's a fast-paced, fun, easy-to-learn spec with some really awesome abilities and animations. Number 5, the Fury Warrior. As I'm getting further into this list, it seems to be obvious that I really like the specs that involve dual wielding, and the Fury Warrior is my personal favourite. Fury Warriors are most well known for their ability to dual wield two-handed swords to deal devastating damage. You're a furious berserker that charges through the battlefield, unleashing a flurry of attacks to carve your opponents to pieces. I tried the Fury Warrior back in Mists of Pandaria and I wasn't really a fan, but in Warlords they went through a lot of changes and it's a spec which I now enjoy playing a lot more. As a Fury Warrior, most of your cool abilities come from your talents, which give you a lot of options. My favourite abilities are Raging Blow, which hits pretty hard, Execute, which hits even harder, Heroic Leap, Blade Storm, where you spin around cleaving everything in your path for big damage, and Charge, which allows you to stick to your target like glue. Overall, the Fury Warrior is a fun, hard-hitting spec with some devastating abilities and a brutal feel. Number 4, the Enhancement Shaman. This is a spec that I've only recently started playing and so far I'm having a blast with it. The thing I love about the Enhancement Shaman and Shaman in general is how they have so many visual effects that are tied to their abilities. They have totems that summon elementals, they can turn into spirit wolves, heal, put up lightning shields, summon wolves and turn into an Ascendant of Air. The description of an Enhancement Shaman is a totemic warrior who strikes foes with weapons imbued with elemental power. To me, that sounds pretty damn cool. My favourite Shaman abilities are Ascendants, in which you turn into an Air Ascendant for 15 seconds, increasing the range of your attacks. Feral Spirit, where you summon a pack of Spirit Wolves to hunt down your enemy, and Chain Lightning, which chains lightning between enemies and just looks really nice. The Enhancement Shaman feels really powerful due to its combat animations and spell effects during combat. They also have some of the best looking armor sets in the game, and for these reasons the Enhancement Shaman gets number 4. Number 3, the Retribution Paladin. The Paladin is clearly one of Blizzard's favourite classes. They've got rich lore, the best visual effects in their abilities, and some of the best looking armor sets in the game. Retribution is my favourite Paladin spec because I just love the rotation and feeling like a righteous crusader who judges and punishes opponents with weapons and holy magic. Like the Shaman, Paladins have some great visual effects in their abilities. You've got wings, bubbles, swirling hammers, and abilities that generally make your character radiate with light and holy magic. My favourite Paladin abilities are Avenging Wrath, otherwise known as Wings, which increase your damage and places golden angelic wings on your back. Divine Shield or Bubble, which protects you from all damage for 8 seconds, meaning you can jump from the sky and bubble just before you hit the ground. And Divine Storm, this ability is one of the best looking AoE attacks in the game and procs all the time. The Ret Pally is a spec I've always found cool, but I've never decided to main one in raiding or PvP. Maybe in Legion I'll raid as a Ret Pally with my sweet Ashbringer. Number 2, the Frost Mage. As a lot of you know, the Frost Mage was the very first spec I decided to play when I picked up World of Warcraft. Over the years it's gone through a lot of changes, but it's still a spec I still love playing today. I feel like Frost Mages have gained a lot of really cool abilities since I started, giving the spec a lot of flavour. My personal favourites being Frozen Orb, where you launch an orb of frost magic ahead of you, damaging enemies near it, and giving the mage a lot of Ice Lance procs. Comet Storm, which barrages your target with a hail of frozen comets, and Ice Nova, which does ridiculous damage for an instant cast spell. I've always enjoyed the fantasy of being a Frost Mage. Just freezing melee players in place and attacking them from range with shatters just feels really satisfying to me. As a mage you can also do other cool stuff such as go invisible, conjure food, slowfall, and be immune to damage with ice block. Overall it's a fun class with a lot of flavour, one that I'm still loving after all of these years. Number 1, the Demonology Warlock. Initially I wanted to make this video a few weeks ago and put up a straw poll allowing people to vote on what spec's the coolest. Although for the most part the straw poll wasn't very helpful, one thing that did stick out was how the Demonology Warlock was voted number 1 by a long shot. And to be honest, I actually agree. What's cooler than controlling demons? Well, actually turning into a demon yourself, of course, and that's exactly what you can do as a Demonology Warlock. A Demonology Warlock is a master of demonic magic, who transforms into a demon and compels demonic powers to aid him. Demo is also a spec with a lot of depth, and is considered one of the hardest specs in the game to play, although a redesign is expected for the launch of Legion. My favourite Demonology Warlock abilities are Metamorphosis, which turns you into a demon adding extra functionality to your abilities, Chaos Wave, which hurls a wave of chaos at enemies, dealing big instant cast damage, and Cataclysm, which is an AoE ability that hits like a truck and applies corruption to enemies. Demonology is however one of my least played specs. I've just never gotten around to giving it a proper try and learning how to play the thing. In Legion though, after all the changes, I'll definitely be playing some Demo Warlock because they're just so damn cool. Just as a side note, with the Demon Hunter being added in Legion, there's a good chance it'd rank pretty high on this list. It's a class I've always wanted to play, and the main reason I'm going to re-roll Demon Hunter is because it's new, looks cool, and can dual wield. If you're watching this video after Legion has been released, then let me know where you would rank the Demon Hunter on this list. So that's it for this video guys. Just to emphasise on what I said earlier, this list is totally my own opinion, so please don't get salty if a spec that you enjoy didn't make it on this list, because what I think's cool and what you think's cool are probably two different things. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to leave a comment because I will try my best to read them, and I'll see you again really soon.